Right now, I mean, the biggest story, if you're involved in college football at all, it is one of the most massive stories we've seen in a long time. Lincoln Riley leaves Oklahoma to go to USC, and now Oklahoma left kind of reeling, trying to figure out what the next move is. So I've enlisted the help of Todd Lisenbee, who does a great job as a morning show host at the franchise in Oklahoma City, and has been covering this. And I'm sure it's been a very wild 48 hours for you, Todd. Man, let me just start with this: like, where are Oklahoma fans at right now in the aftermath of all of this?
I think they've hit all the different stages. There was shock, there was sadness. I think today there's a lot of anger. And then, we just had a press conference earlier today, Monday afternoon, where Bob Stoops was introduced as the interim. And I think now there's like this rejuvenation. It's kind of a rah-rah moment with Stoops coming back as the interim. So I think every stage has been hit, but I think generally I think a lot of Oklahoma fans have a feeling of betrayal. And I know how ironic that sounds considering what Oklahoma and Texas just did to the Big 12 going to the SEC, but it's not something that happens very often. It's certainly not something that happens to a school like Oklahoma. I mean, the last time a coach left Oklahoma to take another college job was Jim Tatum in 1946. So, Oklahoma is usually a destination end of career job, or get fired and fall back into a coordinator type job. It's not a place where you go and use as a stepping stone to go somewhere else. So there's shock and disbelief, but I got to be honest with you, especially locally in the media, and I think even some of the fan base, they're excited because there's not been a head coaching search at OU since 1998 into 1999 when Bob Stoops was hired.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I would think, now I'm just projecting here for Oklahoma fans and people that cover the team and all of that, but I saw like the pushback, for instance, to Dennis Dodd's tweet suggesting that Lincoln Riley had been at the helm of 5 of the best years in Oklahoma's history. And I think it's fair for some people to push back on that, although he did do a great job. But like there was some level to a degree, right, of things becoming a little bit stale and feeling like, I had seen even the sentiment recently in the last month or so, like, hey, Lincoln's kind of fallen off year by year here. So does that play into it too? Like thinking, hey, maybe we had hit the ceiling with this guy.
Well, I think a lot of people thought that 2021 was the year that everything that Lincoln Riley was doing was building to. He had 1 year with Baker Mayfield as a head coach. He had 1 year with Kyler Murray as a head coach, 1 year with Jalen Hurts as a head coach, 1 year with Spencer Rattler, and he was going into his second year with Spencer Rattler. If he had done all that with everyone in their first year, 2021 was the year. Lots of experienced players that would be seniors this year, draft eligible. And everything felt like it was building to this year. And it's just been a steady decline. And what's the crazy part about it, and makes fans wonder, and it's an actually good question, has he had one foot out the door all year? Because the team has made mistakes and played unmotivated at times when you wouldn't expect a team that is well coached and disciplined to do that. And it's been a problem all year long. So I think fans are right to wonder how much this has affected this season, how much his success in the past had been on the shoulders of just really good players, and how good of a coach he really was. I think that was going to happen whether he stayed or now that he leaves. Obviously, a lot of fans, rewrite history a little when someone jilts them. Everyone around here in Oklahoma thinks that Kevin Durant's a terrible NBA player, which is not factually accurate. And I'm sure some people are going to think that Lincoln Riley is a terrible head football coach, which is also not factually accurate. So if Oklahoma felt like they could get a better coach than Lincoln Riley, they wouldn't be paying him more and more money every year to try to keep him, and they wouldn't have offered him this year, as they said they did at the press conference today, to try to keep him. They obviously didn't want to lose him, but I think maybe fans feel like, here's the thing: if he does leave, that tells you he's not cut from the same cloth as Bud Wilkinson, Barry Switzer, and Bob Stoops. If he would do this to you, then you need to go on and find somebody else, because he's not the guy you want anyway.
Yeah, you bring up the 1 foot out the door thing, and if I were an Oklahoma fan, I would certainly be questioning that. I am now, just as somebody observing this from the outside. What do you believe are the details of, like, when, to your best knowledge, like when this actually went down? Like, what had this been planned out since the time that Helton was actually fired at USC early on in the year? And was the LSU stuff just a smokescreen? Like, how do you sort through kind of the timeline on all this and how everything went down?
I think it's fair to assume that ever since Helton's been out, that agents have been talking. agents for Lincoln Riley, and that, you know how all this stuff happens nowadays. You can hold your hands up and go, I didn't talk to anybody, but everybody knows your agent has been talking to somebody. And I think the common knowledge out there is that that's been going on most of the season. I don't know that anyone can really pinpoint when the interest really peaked, and if that didn't all just happen over the last week. I don't know if something happened that was a straw that broke the camel's back, where Lincoln Riley said, I do think USC is a better job. I do know that there have been rumors all year that Lincoln Riley and the athletic department were at a little bit of odds, maybe disagreeing on what the correct way to set up the program was to go into the SEC. It's never, no one's ever going to come out and tell you this is true, but some people think that maybe Lincoln Riley was unhappy about some of the things that were being done or weren't being done to get Oklahoma prepared to go into the SEC. And some people think Lincoln Riley didn't have any input on it, although Joe Castiglione and the OU brass will tell you differently. So I think there's just been so many weird things at play this year, and I think it's something that's built, and it's built and built and built, and maybe just he got hit at the right time with the right offer and said yes to USC. And if that's the case, if it had gotten to that point, I think both sides are going to be better off in the long run with him moving on anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go like ultra conspiracy theory here, you would tack on too that there's been this shift over the last, and you could speak to this more than I could, but a shift over the last, 9 to 10 months toward recruiting more on the West Coast. And that was where Oklahoma had a lot of commits in 2023, for instance, lined up at skill positions. Are there those that would dive really far into that and say, hey, like Lincoln's been kind of orchestrating this, playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers, sort of a thing there?
Well, I know this much. As of the time we record this, I think the number is either 7 or 8 decommitments already from the 22 and 23 classes, including the number one quarterback in the country in the 2023 class and Malachi Nelson, including Kobe McInnes, who is their highest rated defensive player in the 2022 class. And when you talk to so many recruits and guys that do this for a living that I'm tight with, that talk to these guys, they will tell you the recruits love Lincoln Riley, all of them. You ask them, why are you choosing Oklahoma? I love Lincoln Riley, especially recruits on the offensive side of the ball. And I think now it begs the question, A, how much has the immediate future been gutted of Oklahoma with how many players are going to transfer with them? And then B, how much of the future in the next 2-3 years has been gutted by this move? I mean, this is a very important hire for Joe Castiglione, because with everything falling the way it is, with the timing of it all, I mean, there's a good possibility that the day one starter at Oklahoma next year at quarterback is coming out of the transfer portal. And this is a team that had 2 of the top quarterbacks in the country from the last 4 recruiting classes, and Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams on the sidelines, a week ago, a couple days ago. So it's just kind of wild that that's where the program is at now. And my cohort, Eddie Radosevich, on the morning show, he said this morning, it's not that Oklahoma's immediately going to fall back to where Nebraska's at, but this could be the start of that if you don't get this next hire right. So I think everyone knows how important this is. And, I think everyone's fired up that Bob Stoops is back as the interim. I don't think he's going to come back. I don't think Lincoln Riley was Oklahoma's Ron Prince. You'll appreciate that. I don't think Bob's going to come back and do a second stint. But I do think he's a great guy to have out there for the brand for OU, and to keep those recruits engaged and to keep as much of that coaching staff together as he can.
Yeah, I mean, what's the thought on the assistants that are going? I guess maybe we don't have official confirmation on that, but I saw like Grinch and Benbaugh, right, were a couple that were supposed to be there that I know fans felt like really hurt. What is the situation there right now?
This morning, a few local reporters, including my buddy Eddie Radosevich, were out at the airport and saw Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch, Dennis Simmons, who's a wide receivers coach, Benny Wiley, who is the strength and conditioning coach, all get on a plane with, Lincoln Riley, and Clark Stroud, who's also a player development guy at OU, or a player personnel guy, kind of Lincoln Riley's right-hand man. So those guys are all gone. Biedenbow had been rumored last night, the offensive line coach. And as of today, it seems to be up in the air what he's going to decide to do. He could possibly leave. And then, the weird question is, and it's a legitimate question, Bob Stoops is probably going to have to hire some short-term coaches just to get the bowl game prep going, because Oklahoma's entire coaching staff is going to be gutted in the next week. And I don't know what would have happened if Bedlam went differently on Saturday, if Oklahoma was playing in a Big 12 championship game this week, if this just would have all been put off, or if, some crazy things would have happened and Oklahoma might have even had a chance to get into the playoff had they won out. It's always going to be an interesting what if, but as it stands right now, lots of guys are already into the transfer portal. Lots of guys are decommitting, and I think there are a lot of players on Oklahoma's roster that are draft eligible that maybe might get the nudge out the door on that as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the roster gets put together.